I'm not good enough at this to know.
There's something interesting about pain, which is that I think there are even some studies about this. Uh, I can't refer to any studies because I don't really keep up with scientific publications or studies. But uh, a lot of pain is psychological. Much of pain is psychological. So that being the case, I think that meditators, especially Buddhist meditators, have known this and understood that if they stay with the pain rather than bypass it or skip it, which is also possible, um, it's a good opportunity to release that psychological pain, fear, whatever related to that or attached to that, that is together with the physical pain. And this, in fact, when that psychological pain is released, then the pain becomes much less. The physical pain lessens significantly. And this is exactly what Tia and Helena and perhaps Irene also, some others have written about in the Sangha, that it works. But having said that, there is also extreme pain. So when it's extreme, when it well, there are yogic practices such as the one we were breathing in the spine in the early beginning of the retreat. That's one way to get away from pain. Well, that's a yogic way, but I guess you could in the mind, just like fakirs do. Fakirs are is Muslim. What is the word? Do you know the word fakir? Fakir. So these are like Muslim. What is the word? Ascetics. Ascetics. So, and David Blaine is an excellent example of this. He has even said in an interview that when he saw a documentary of ascetics who, put metal nails and metal wires through the, push it through the arm, or, stuff like this, he instantly felt like click, and he's a reincarnation of ascetic like that, having done wild stuff in previous lives. That's why he can do it now. It's so easy for him now in this life. But so the way how they do this is that it's kind of interesting, and one can learn a lot from one's pains and anxiety, one's mind, doing stuff like that. Just uh, illuminating the physical pain. And then it ceases to be. When the terror, when the fear of it goes away, it ceases to be painful. You know, I think that also someone who is really famous nowadays is Wim Hof, this Dutch iceman. Wim Hof uses this also. When he's in a freezing, in a tank of snow and ice, buried like hours and hours on end. I think he did like 24 hours buried under ice and snow in Manhattan, in New York, some years ago. They just learn to bypass it. So they just stop being scared of it. And that's how the physical body, it can take a lot. There are all kinds of feats people do, pushing the barriers of the body and mind. So yeah, there's that way of bypassing it. The Buddhist way would be to stay with it, to get rid of the psychological baggage. Mm. But then, of course, if you're not into that wild stuff, or if the pain is too much to handle, I take painkillers, and that's it.
I used to be into that, hanging from hooks.
Of course you were.
But then the pain is like you can't escape it. So for me, what happened was just that it becomes heat. It's just heat. So there is no actual pain to it. It's just heat in the body where the hooks are. Because there are also lots of endorphins and all kinds of things that are released, which are natural painkillers.
Mm, mm, mm. Go ahead, Gwen.
For a long time, I've dealt with emotional pain by really focusing on it. Even before I became interested in Buddhism, I sort of discovered that that worked. I haven't really tried it with physical pain. I don't know why, but it's certainly, even with quite intense emotional pain, that does seem to work.
Yeah.
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 What do you mean focus on it, Gwen?
Just put your complete attention on the pain. Your whole attention on the pain and keep it there until it goes.
Do you identify it like in the physical body, like?
Yeah. Even though I'm not sure I did that to start with. I just focused on the feeling, I think, of whatever it was. But yeah, you could certainly locate it as well. That would probably be even better. I would do that now.
It's Vipassana, really, isn't it, then?
Yeah, maybe. I haven't
Sounds like
thought
it.
about it that way, but yeah.
Sounds like it.
Yes, I just wanted to say in my experience also, like if for emotional pain, if you also do this be passionate, there's like an element of exhaustion of the psychological pain at some point if you observe it, and
Yes.
at some point it just disappears, and you just because pain at the end is part of life. You there's a lot of pain with sickness or even with giving birth. The pain is just indicating the right movement of the baby. All the tissues are being pulled up and you're feeling this pain, but it indicates the right things. If you put resistance to this pain, then you run into trouble by giving birth. Otherwise you don't have birth. But the suffering that come with feeling the pain, you can probably just observe it and let it exhaust also.
Yeah. I used to just a quick comment mentioning Wim Hof. I used to do that kind of practice in the winter, in the cold. That was back when winters were still cold, properly cold. But like I used to run half marathons in freezing temperatures without shirts and stuff like this. Way back. But that's actually very, let's say, quite common in Finland. Just recently, a couple of years ago, I read a newspaper article from this tiny local newspaper from North Karelia, where I'm from. That's the part in Finland which is close to the border of Russia, Eastern Finland. and there was this older gentleman who was 80 something years old, and he had every morning, he had for decades already, he had walked 7 kilometers to a like a place next to a river where he took a dip every day of the year, well, almost every day, and then he walked back 7 kilometers. So this means like he takes the dip even if it's in that part of Finland, it can be minus 30 Celsius, minus 40 Celsius at times. This time of year it's can be minus 20 Celsius for weeks, several weeks lasting. But this fellow, he walks to the river, takes a dip, dries himself up with a towel, puts on the clothes again and walks back. So it's not like there are people like this. I remember when I was a boy, I saw in Finland we had this TV personality called Karpo, Hannu Karpo, and he had a TV program for decades. And in one episode in the 80s, there was this man who sometimes in that show there was these funny people or strange people featured, and there was this man who said that one day he just felt like not wearing clothes anymore. So he only had like Speedos, summer or winter, and then, you know, in the 80s, winters were still properly cold in Finland. So he was seen in that TV show riding a bicycle in minus 32 Celsius or something, with the Speedos, with shoes, no socks, and, you know, saying hi from his bike to his neighbors and the, you know, villagers in his village. So this happens in Finland. Yeah. Go ahead, Liz, you had something.
I suppose I like a couple of years ago, if I had pain, I wouldn't have realized how much fear I was feeling attached to that pain. You know, that would the pain go away? Will I be stuck with the pain? What is the pain? You know, does it mean I'm going to die? You know, so I suppose in recent years, since I've been doing this and since I've started to understand, I can kind of see how much fear is attached to it. So I suppose looking at it is probably the right thing to do, to try and detach some of the fear from it and to just let the pain be and try to see the pain without the actual fear that's attached to it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Very useful. Thank you.
Pain is interesting, like Patricia was saying, that pain can be a great teacher. I remember actually now that, you know, I remember these stories. There is this classical Zen book on Zen Buddhism called Three Pillars of Zen by Philip Kapleau, where there is an account of a young Japanese lady who's maybe 23 or 24 years old, who had a, do you say, terminal disease, like she was very close to her passing away. And there is, in that book, there is a written correspondence of her and this older, already over 80 years old Zen master. So they were sending letters back and forth close to when she was about to pass away, and it's really wonderful to read. And I just remember this Zen master Harada Sogakuroshi. I remember him, you know, writing comments to that correspondence and saying that, you know, there hasn't been as enlightened person in Japan for hundreds of years, that this young girl, she, you know, was able to see through the barriers of delusion because mostly because of her illness, that, you know, the discomfort and pain and all of that gave no option. There was no option to place to hide. So she had to die already when she was still alive and feeling the pain. I remember one of my really good and dear and old friends from Japan is this Frenchman. His name is Christophe, but his Dharma name is Dogen. So we always call him Dogen. And he's now 50, maybe 52, 53 years old. And he's lived in Japan since he was 17. He's devoted all his life to Buddhist practice and martial arts. And Dogen's teacher, whose name is Shiokawa, was a really legendary martial arts master who I also met in Japan. I was fortunate to meet him. And Shiokawa sensei, when he was a young man, he was a kamikaze pilot in Second World War. And what happened is that he was sent on 2 kamikaze missions. So kamikazes are the type of pilots in World War II in Japanese army who drove or flew these really simple airplanes that were full of explosives. So these were like suicide missions to destroy the ships of Americans and other opponents. So he did 2 kamikaze flights, and both times he was shot down and he fell into the sea. And both, actually I'm not sure if it's both times, but on the first time he was shot down and fell into the sea, and he had to survive floating on the sea for 1 full week before he was somehow rescued. And he said that, you know, he died there floating on the sea day and night, full week, without food and drink and scorching sun during the days. And interestingly, many years later, my Zen grandfather, who was really famous master, his name was Omori Sogen Roshi, who was the teacher of my teacher, Terayama Sensei. Omori Sogen Roshi he got to know about Shiokawa Sensei, who was already a legendary martial artist in Japan by then, and he asked Shiokawa Sensei to teach this sword drawing art called Iaido for himself and his students. So Shiokawa Sensei accepted the invitation and started teaching him and them. And then at some point, Omori Sogen, who was a Zen master, he said that, you know, Shiokawa Sensei is the only person he's ever met who doesn't need to meditate, because he died already floating there on the sea. So just, you know, I'm saying these stories just to remind us how simply we can, you know, if we are able to see past our comfort zones, coping strategies, when those are no longer there, there is no me there. Yesterday I was reading somebody posted a quote from Chongchar Khyentse Rinpoche, who's maybe 50, 60 years old, Tibetan Buddhist teacher alive. And in that quote he was saying that, you know, Buddhist practice is not meant to make you feel good. Actually, it's the opposite. That's what he said, that it's the opposite. And as you know, sometimes like Luke knows from last night, that sometimes you feel fucking awful. And many times you know that it's because of practice. It's because the practice, you know, uncovers some demons and dirt and filth from your mind that it makes you sick for some time. And when you are sick, you know, then you kind of have no option except to feel that sickness and release that self in that sickness, in that pain, in that confusion.
Actually, it's also like that when people are dying. The more resistance that they make to the pain, the more resistance, the more unpeaceful is the death.
Mm.
It's what I see in the patients that I see that are dying. There's just an element of psychological pain
Yeah.
that they actually increase when they make the resistance to feel the pain. And when they actually kind of like let it go and just I don't know, just feel the pain and just transpass it, you know, just work through it. I don't know how would it be explained, but when they take this step forward, then it just flows.
Yeah, yeah. You mean that when the moment of death happens, then it flows? Yes.
The
Yes.
whole process of really detaching, I guess, to all the functions of your body, the psychological, you know, when they feel that they're dependent, you know, they're not independent anymore. All this is just pain, 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 and more pain. And to say goodbye to the families and stuff. All this is, if they make this resistance, it just takes so much longer. And also the families, when they approach,
Yeah.
they come with a lot of resistance. They make the whole process much more painful than when it is more peaceful, you know, and just go ahead and kind of like, I mean, it doesn't mean that you have to stay with the pain and suffer the pain.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of like you just take the step forward and then you transpass it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a there is a you know, death is a taboo in our modern societies. We don't see dead people anymore. People don't see dead people anymore. And I think there's a real need for education about death to dispel these misunderstandings, confusions, and fears about it. Everybody comes to die, you know, and it's unfortunate that I've helped a bunch of people in their passing, including close relatives and then relatives of friends. And I don't think I have seen any, with the exception of Sivakami, my teacher, I have not seen somebody who can die, others who were able to die peacefully. And that's unfortunate. Just like Luke was describing his experience from the painful to this disembodied state without pain, that's how it feels. That's how dying feels like. And of course, you know, we have practices. Well, really, a lot of what we do in Pemako Tantra has to do with dying. But I was going to mention that, you know, there is this practice called POWA, where PHOWA, where one learns to eject one's energy through the top of the crown to the space above the head. So there is this yoga of dying, but you know what we do in Pemako Tantra, because there's so much traffic between the body and the space above the to the Mahasiddha Bhumis, that's where we are training for dying. So so dying is extremely fantastic. I remember passing away from previous lives, the moment of dying, as well as I've had that experience in this life, not clinically dying, but leaving the body, which is the same like, you know, astral projection is how they call it, leaving the body, you know. Yeah, and it feels fantastic. Just like I was saying to in relation to clear light sleep, being aware during deep sleep, that's how it feels like. Just this weightless space that is fantastically alive and loving and pure, and you just don't feel your body anymore because you don't have it in deep sleep or after you leave your body. Was it Gwen or Liz who was? Gwen.
I wonder if you got my email about dying, Kim.
When was it?
Quite a few weeks ago.
I don't think I have.
Okay, I'll send it again.
Okay.
This letting go into death, I think, is the main. So many people report spiritual benefit of psychedelic drugs, and that is, in my experience, what happens is that you have to go through. If you take enough, there is no way but one way, and you have to go through the dying process, and while being alive, but you have no reassurance that you are not actually dying. So it feels like you are dying, and you then can either let go, or you can grasp, and then you end up in hell if you grasp. If you're not able to let go, it's hours of going through different hell realms in your own mind. So
So you had to go through the hell realms, right?
several times. But I think a few times been able to let go, but I don't use it anymore because there is no guarantee in my case. There's it can be the worst experience or it can be the best experience, and you have no guarantee either way unless you deal with the stuff, like keep a practice in outside of it.
Yeah.
But it has taken me by surprise. I've thought I've been much more able to let go, and then pop, there's a surprise that comes up, and then there is no letting go at all.
Yeah. That's interesting, yeah.
Even to the point I've experienced that so these are not visualization, these are kind of hallucinations that take place, but I've felt the fluids leaving my body, everything. So I thought that I pissed myself and shat myself and everything, and then I didn't. But you can feel the whole effect of the dying process there. So those who report, or those who actually, so if you are able to let go and have the experience afterwards, that's where all the therapeutical effect comes from in psychedelics. But if you don't, then it can lead to dark night for a long time, and it can increase anxiety, increase everything.
It is a fascinating topic, this shamanistic traditions and shamanistic training with the help of psychedelics, because in Tantra, well, Pemako Tantra is it's simplified from the ritual perspective. No, we don't have thigh bone trumpets, and we don't have skull cups, and we don't have a lot of these things that they have in Tibetan Vajrayana Buddhism. But if you look at Tibetan Vajrayana Buddhism, and especially practices like Chöd, for example, Chöd of Mache Glabdron. Mache Glabdron was this female master who established this practice called Chöd. And if you start looking at that practice or some other elements in Tibetan Buddhism, you see a lot of similarity with shamanistic practices that are still practiced in Siberia, Mongolia, South America, Africa, in different places, Australia, Aboriginals. And it's fascinating to think that to what degree, and of Hawaii, of course, Hawaii is a big one. It's fascinating to think to what extent they had dharmic wisdom in shamanism before these dharmic traditions as we know it started. Because according to some sort, well, I guess it's safe to say that shamanistic traditions not only have been almost identical all over the world in different cultures that had no obvious connection with each other, and what was I going to say? That they have been very similar doing the same practices. And that's very interesting. I think I missed some point, but maybe it'll come to me in a moment. But it's fascinating to think that, if and when they did practices like that, using psychedelics or not using psychedelics, we can have a psychedelic, what we would maybe say psychedelic trip or a journey without psychedelics. That's very intense experience. But there is shamanistic training and methods where, these things are passed from teachers to students. So they must have had like a real non-dualistic insights. And that's fantastic. What is really interesting is that in Buddhism, Buddhist tradition speaks of, is it 4 or 5? I think 4 world Buddhas before Shakyamuni Buddha, and the previous one before Shakyamuni, who lived physically about 2,500 years ago, was Buddha Kashyapa. I have here Buddha Kashyapa's relic in a stupa. I'm not sure, maybe it's not. You can see a white pearl there inside the stupa. Can you?
Towards the bottom.
Yeah. This small white pearl. This is a relic of that Buddha Kashyapa that I have. Some of you have held this and received blessings. I'll hold it for a moment. So, Buddha Kashyapa's vibes, this week we have been practicing with Buddhist Mahasiddhas as well as Hindu Mahasiddhas. To me, Buddha Kashyapa feels more Hindu than Buddhist. And that's very interesting because he's regarded one of, the world Buddha before Shakyamuni. Nobody knows when Kashyapa lived or what he taught. And, they didn't call Kashyapa's teachings Buddha, Dharma. Probably didn't. So it was called something else, maybe shamanism. Can you feel his presence? Just pick up the vibe. Let's enjoy it for a while. With open mind and heart, welcoming Buddha Kashyapa, welcoming his presence, his blessings, for the sake of all sentient beings. If you like, you can remember and compare how does Kashyapa Buddha's presence feel compared to Guru Rinpoche's, Babaji's, Krishna's, Patanjali's, Yeshe Tsogyal's. How same, how different. Stay with Kashyapa, lying down.
Presence, like really big, kind of wild presence. I really liked it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Felt had a kind of affinity with it actually, yeah, but yeah, it was a strong charge.
What did you think of if you compare his presence with other Mahasiddhas you're familiar with?
He feels old for some reason, you know, like archetypally old. He doesn't feel as wrathful as Guru Rinpoche. Feels sort of more, I don't know, playful isn't the right word, but sort of wild and free. Guru Rinpoche feels kind of more wrathful and a bit more serious. I felt that Kashyapa felt he just had a massive, big, spacious presence. Whereas Guru Rinpoche feels very big as well, but sort of powerful. And you know, that's how I felt the difference between them. I thought he was the only Buddha I actually compared. I only compared those two. I didn't go through the list that you mentioned, but I will. Yeah, but I really liked him. He felt, yeah, it just felt old, ancient, sort of like an archetypal type of Buddha. And it did have that sort of, like you say, like a sort of a feeling of, you know, connection with Hinduism, that sort of playfulness, freedom, just carefreeness, I felt came through. And yeah, like sometimes Buddhist deities, they have that sort of seriousness about it, sort of, well, they generally do, but he didn't so much, you know. That's how I felt it. Yeah.
Yes.
Sort of because it just felt like he predated all of that, sort of almost like the systematic school of Buddhism. He just kind of predates that, and so you don't get that feeling of sort of this is, you know, it's just more wild and more free and sort of natural or something. I feel a little bit anyway.
That's a good word, predates.
Yeah.
That's how I feel as well. I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Other comments?
You wouldn't just write the name, Kim, would you, in the chat there?
Yes. Just a moment. I'm looking for a picture of another one.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Another Mahasiddha who's already on the doorstep.
I also thought that it felt very old, like entering a very, very old temple somewhere in the jungle, like these very antique, ancient places. And yes, old, but not in the sense of, dying or dead. It's like timelessly old, like this feeling of timeless age. And not this timeless freshness. It's kind of, it's just a nuance, but very, very catchy, very, very something new in its oldness aspect. I liked how Jonathan described it. I can really, really sign this one.
Just a moment. I added a picture to the Dropbox folder. It goes directly to the Mahasiddhas folder. I added Agastya. Oh yes, someone asked me to write the name of Kashyapa. Kashyapa was the previous one.